So welcome to this special edition of the Clyde and Lomond Heritage Podcast with myself, Paul Murdoch, and
myself, Robert Ryan.
And Robert, this is a subject that came up in our last film we did about John Logie Baird.
Yeah, well, we were at the exhibition in Helensburgh, which was celebrating Baird's centenary of his first broadcast, and we noticed that the name Jack Buchanan had come up quite a lot throughout Baird's career. He'd been a friend at school of Baird and advertised these products later. So we thought we'd have a wee look at Jack Buchanan's career.
Yeah, Jack Buchanan, born in Helensburgh as well, obviously, same as Baird. Went to the same school as well.
Yeah, they went to quite a posh school in Helensburgh, Larchfield, a fee-paying school. It's now absorbed into the Lomond school, which is a school now. You're looking at me because I'm saying,
No, I'm not. Yeah, we call ourselves, he's and I'm because we've realised, we look back, we do a lot of ums and ehs. We're trying to be good today.
Right.
So we should really have a penalty box.
An air box.
An air box and an box.
Yeah.
Okay, so look, yeah, Jack Buchanan, quite a dapper guy.
Yeah.
He went also to, was it Glasgow High or what school?
Well, the original plan for Walter John Buchanan, as he was in those days, was that he should go to Fettes School in Edinburgh, a very posh place, and it was the plan was that he would be a boarder there.
Okay,
but actually his father, who was an auctioneer, that's where he'd made his money. He died in 1902. So the more modest option was still a very posh school, Glasgow Academy, where I believe he attended daily rather than being a boarder.
Okay, and we saw a picture of his house earlier on, which we'll maybe put up.
Well, it was a very nice house in Helensburgh.
He wasn't a poor man.
I don't think the ice cream van visited that area very often.
Maybe not. He's a dapper guy. He became, I guess, the Scottish equivalent of Fred Astaire.
Yeah, I suppose latterly he did, but certainly he was the debonair man about town, very comfortable in the top hat and tails, and perhaps left his Scottishness behind a wee bit. When you hear any of his spoken, even in private speech, when he was a very received pronunciation guy.
Oh yeah, it's like that, was it?
Yes, yeah.
But I was told that when he got angry, he did revert to the Scottish dialect.
I would love to see something
about
that.
So it's like, oh yeah, so what do you mean? Back again. So,
a bit like Lulu, I suppose.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But I guess that's, yes, if you've had a wee drink and you get angry, you can revert to your Scottishness a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was, as I said, he appeared in all sorts of films.
But he didn't start out as a...
No, so how did he start out?
He started out as a stand-up comedian and called himself Chump Buchanan.
Okay.
Whilst I think that was a really poor stage name of choice, but it turned out it was quite apt.
And we're talking about the 20s here, are we?
Yeah, 1911. So he would have been in his early 20s at that time. And unfortunately, he didn't cut it as a stand-up comic.
Yeah.
And he decided then to take a different course in his entertainment career.
He went down the dancing route, obviously, and
yeah,
the whole singing, dancing, acting.
He was a song and dance man.
Right.
He did acting, but very often the films were musicals and
the bandwagon.
The van, yeah. Well, that was much later.
It was much later on.
Yeah,
we'll jump ahead. But he went down to London to make it, kind of thing.
Yes, I think he did appear in theatre in Scotland, but I think that was probably much later. And
notice that there were no people who were quite dapper, kind of after the First World War, were called nuts.
Yes,
K-N-U-T.
Yeah,
nuts.
You've got to be careful how you say it.
Yes.
And yes, now talking about the First World War, in the run up to that, he made his West End debut on 7th of September 1912 as Monsieur Deschamps in a comic opera. And then he starred in The Grass Widows, and he then failed his medical exam for the war. Right. And the fact that another chap did pass his medical was Buchanan's big opportunity, because he joined a touring production of The Cinema Star, and he was understudying a very famous actor called Jack Hulbert, and that gave Buchanan his chance, because Hulbert was called up for action. And
so the First World War we're talking about here, obviously.
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
So yeah, but he said, obviously I'm reading now, he was in London between 1910 and 1920 sort of thing.
Yes.
He also went on to become an actor manager as well, and producing his own shows, and even he didn't build Leicester Square Theatre, but I think he was involved in its kind of opening and stuff like that.
Yeah, so not just an actor, an impresario, and a manager, and a theatre owner,
yeah,
or part theatre owner.
Yeah.
But he also found time to get married in 1915, and this was to a lady called Sappho Arno. And it seems that she was a Bulgarian, and unless she had a British husband, she wouldn't have been allowed to stay here in the First World War. Indeed, she would probably have been imprisoned. However, the marriage was annulled in 1920, and Buchanan didn't refer to that at all. He played up the image of being the eligible bachelor after that.
He did. But he was married again after that in 1949.
Yeah, but when you think about that, he was probably nearly 60 years old at that time, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So he was a bit of a philanthropist. He was quite generous with other people, certainly struggling actors.
Yes.
It's said that he would give them money to help them out if they were struggling, but he quite often didn't want anybody to know he'd done it. He wanted to be anonymous about it.
As his stage persona was of this kind of very posh, quite rich, and actually caricatured as an Englishman, really. I mean, the Scots stuff, I know we've spoken about it before, that maybe he lapsed into the vernacular when he got angry, but really, in all of these films and any kind of interviews that he did, it was always this very posh.
Yeah. We watched a Pathy News. You can get the Pathy News interview on YouTube. I'm not sure, I don't think we're allowed to use it, but you can go and we'll put a link to that. And you can see then how he speaks off stage as well.
That's right. Well,
it
was a very interesting interview, because that one we're talking about was 1949 when he'd get married the second time. And he came down the gangplank, and they talked to this interviewer, and really he was just having another acting performance. It was almost like watching someone acting in a film. And I think he found it very difficult when he had a microphone of any kind.
He would just play up to it.
He would play up to it. He would revert to the actor.
I wonder if he spoke in private with his wife like that as well, or whether he went back to his normal.
We'll probably never know. No.
Yeah, he was a bit of a perfectionist, though. It was said he was never idle. He liked to have about 3 or 4 or 5 projects going at once. And it said even when he came to dancing, he would practice and practice until his feet bled.
Yeah.
So it just looked effortless, you know.
That's the thing about him. It was this.
He was a big guy, wasn't he?
He was a big guy. The effortless, debonair Jack Buchanan. And if you look, we've already spoken about the film he did with Fred Astaire. The Bandwagon. And if you look at that, he's taller than Astaire.
Mm-hmm.
He's better looking than Astaire. And actually, despite the height difference, despite Buchanan being a big chap, very, very lithe and a great dancer. And personally, if you do watch it, he was often referred to as the British Fred Astaire. And someone, I think after that film, one of the critics said perhaps Astaire should be known as the American Jack Buchanan.
Yeah. I think also Astaire himself said after that film that it was one of the few times he felt he had to up his game.
Yeah.
Because he felt as if Buchanan was really chasing after him.
But it's as you say about that intense practice and rehearsal to develop what looks like totally nonchalant and reliant.
Laid back, the feet are doing it by themselves.
Yes.
And the top half's almost.
Yeah. We really must try that some. Sure, we'll practice in rehearsal.
Tap dancing next week. Tune in. So really, he played a guy called Jeffrey Cordova in The Bandwagon. And it was a little bit of a self-parody of his own life.
Yes.
And that the person in the movie was a high-stakes producer-director.
The other thing to mention was that, I mean, he was well into his 60s at that stage. And certainly, I mean, I'm sure there was stage makeup involved, but looked, he was playing the part of a much younger man.
Yeah.
And certainly his dancing didn't belie the fact that he was almost a pensioner by that time.
And he was quite a few other films as well. We actually watched a clip again from a YouTube film where he was in a film with Norman Wisdom.
That's right.
And Diana Dors.
Yes.
And he came across again very, very plumb.
Gemini and plug. And
you described it perfectly. It was that kind of comedy, that non-funny.
Yeah. I mean, really, to me, any kind of pre-1960s British comedy has to be put into inverted commas. Even the presence of Norman Wisdom, I don't think saved that one from. It was all very proper and pucker.
There was wee bits of kind of supposedly funny bits, but it's one of these kind of safe, slightly funny films that you often saw on Saturday mornings. I did when I was a kid.
Yes.
Just come on Saturday mornings and you'd be like, oh, yeah. And your mum would plonk you down and you were quite safe to watch it.
Yeah.
He also helped out Logie Baird financially, I believe, as well.
Yes, I could quite believe it.
They remained friends, I think.
They were great friends, and that friendship went well beyond their upbringing in Helensburgh. They crossed paths.
Yeah.
I mean, both of them spent a lot of time in London, the southeast of England. And
he was quite a heavy smoker by the looks of the different clips I've seen.
Indeed, and I think probably we found contributory cause of his death, and was it 57, I think?
Right, 1957.
Yeah.
Passed away, and that was cancer, I think he passed away with.
Yeah. Going back to, we were talking about his films. His film career started in 1917 in a silent movie. His film career proper, if you like, as a principal, a 1917 silent movie called Auld Lang Syne. And previously he'd been an extra in silent movies such as Yes, Mrs. Brown, Brewster's Millions, and The Gang's All Here.
Brewster's Millions, which was also obviously remade years later.
Indeed.
But he also was, as you said, dapper. And we looked up his net worth at the end of his life, which was £44,000, which was equivalent to now about 1.3, 1.6 million.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a huge amount, it was nearly amount.
We have to apply a bit of context to that, Paul. As we talked about earlier, actors are paid huge amounts. Actors at the top of their game.
Like football players now, I suppose.
Football players, very famous ones from the 1950s or 1940s, would be earning not all that much more than a tradesman. And whilst actors would probably be earning a bit more than that, I think to die a millionaire in 1957 was quite something, or the equivalent of a millionaire.
Yeah, equivalent of a millionaire. And he did spend a lot of money. As I said, he was a philanthropist. He gave his money away to a lot of people who needed it, like Baird and other actors, as we said. He also spent a lot of money on his looks. And it was said he had over 200 suits. And it said he changed his clothes 4 times a day. So he must have been must have had a bit of a wardrobe.
He was either doing something he shouldn't have, rather a lot.
He's been a bit smelly and a bit over precious.
Yeah. So anyway, the first movie musical that he starred in was with Irene Bordini. It was called Paris.
Right.
And then another one called Monte Carlo, co-starring with Jeanette MacDonald. But
he married again, as we said, in 1949. I was told he kept that quite secret for a few years. But then again, there's this Pathy.
The Pathy folk
to them with his
maybe played it down a little bit.
Yeah, because he wanted to become his image was a bachelor guy, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
So I think we've covered a wee bit about Jack Buchanan.
Yeah.
So hopefully you've enjoyed it, and we've certainly learned by doing these things. We kind of look up things and learn as we go a little bit. So hopefully you have too, and enjoyed listening to our pub-like banter rather than heritage sometimes. But it's hopefully, yeah, it's a nice way to find out about stuff.
Yeah, it's been very educational, learning more about John Logie Baird, and then learning, obviously about his friend, and realising that these two schoolmates went on to become absolute stellar in their chosen profession.
And I've just mentioned briefly, there's a book out where there's over 100 people from Helensburgh area that have went on to do some good things.
And tell me, Paul, which current resident of Cardiff appears in that book?
Can't remember. Unworthy. But but there's lots of people to dive into there, I would think.
Yes.
Yeah. So
we don't want to be too Helensburgh concentric.
No, I think we're Clyde. The thing is, it's Clyde and Lomond. We have talked about Loch Lomond and some of the stylings and things. We should really look across the Clyde really to Port Glasgow and some of the places, because the Clyde is a big place. It goes all the way to bigger Lanarkshire.
Yeah.
So we've got a permission to use.
We can use all sorts of places. Poetic license.
And you're a big Burns fan, and actually Burns must have crossed the Clyde many times in different parts of Scotland. We need to look into that. And get away with using getting enough sources to.
Well, he definitely visited Glasgow, so.
Well, he came to Dumbarton briefly as well.
Yeah, he was in Dumbarton for a day, I think, and then he was given the freeman of the town.
Okay, and I believe he went to Renton to see the Smollett monument that's there as well.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll find out a bit more about that another time. Thanks for tuning in. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel if you can. It helps us. It helps us keep our morale up. It doesn't get us any money, I don't think.
And never have the words YouTube been more accurate.
Thank you, and bye for now.
Bye. Thank you.